Okay, so let's get started. Does anybody here favor sad movies? Maybe not necessarily sad movies or TV shows, but ones with like darker themes, or maybe like horror. Something along these feelings that aren't always so happy and easy. Personally, I love sad movies. I've liked plenty of other kinds of movies too, but anybody who knows me pretty well knows if given the choice between like a feel-good or a comedy or something that is like a dark and sad themed sort of movie, I'm probably gonna go with the latter. For whatever reason, I keep going back to these movies and I enjoy them. Some of you might be thinking, she's weird for that, or maybe you just can't relate. But I know that I'm not alone because the TV and film industry just keep pumping out all of these, movies and shows that are dark or sad, or there's plenty of horror movies, things like that. So I know there are plenty of us out there who enjoy sadness. And then most of us, we know this book, which is a Bible. And we might not know everything in there, if we're being honest with ourselves, but I'm pretty sure a few of you could probably tell me about how the Bible, it talks about a lot about love and family, or maybe like it talks about Jesus a lot. And it's really hard because if you know your Bibles, you know that it's a very diverse book. There's a lot of different sorts of literature and stories happening. But I don't think one of the main themes we would identify in the Bible is this darkness or sadness, maybe in the same way we would a movie or a show. And maybe you do see some more darkness and sadness, and I think I would just say that means you might know your Bible a little bit better than most, or in a different way than most, I guess. But yeah, so I'm going to read one of our focus passages right now, and then we're going to get into it. Okay, so Ecclesiastes 4:1-8. When I next observed all the oppressions that take place under the sun, I saw the tears of the oppressed, and they have no one to comfort them. Their oppressors wield power, but they have no one to comfort them. So I declare that the dead who have already died are more fortunate than the living, who are still alive. But happier than both are those who have never existed, who haven't witnessed the terrible things that happen under the sun. I also observed that people work hard and become good at what they do only out of mutual envy. This too is pointless, just wind chasing. Fools fold their hands and eat their own flesh. But better is resting with one handful than working hard for two fistfuls and chasing after the wind. Next, I saw under the sun something else that was pointless. There are people who are utterly alone, with no companions, not even a child or a sibling. Yet they work hard without end, never satisfied with their wealth. So, for whom I am working so hard and depriving myself of enjoyment? This too is pointless, and a terrible obsession. It's a little dark, a little sobering, maybe, perhaps, depending on your approach to life. And if you've ever read through this book of Ecclesiastes, then you're probably going to know that that is common in it. It's a pretty dark book. A lot of people say it's a gloomy book. It tells us a lot about how everything is pointless. It talks a lot about death. And overall, it comes off as pretty negative. It can be pretty cynical even. And this doesn't necessarily, this book of Ecclesiastes, this dark theme we find, it doesn't necessarily match the other themes that we find throughout the Bible. This book is very unique, and it kind of stands apart in a very particular way. Personally, it's one of my favorites, and I don't just say that because I like sad movies. While there is some correlation to that, I think that this book has a lot of meaning and is very powerful to what is going on in this thing called faith. So just to give a little more context on this book, Ecclesiastes, it is a wisdom book, actually, which means that in one way or another, its objective is to speak towards a more wise, and in that, a better life. Conventional wisdom, which we might think of, which we might label as what would more easily be understood as wisdom, it's commonly found in another wisdom book, which is the book of Proverbs, which kind of outlines a general path towards a better life. This might be thought of as like, if you act good and you do good things will happen to you. If you act bad or you do bad things will happen to you. Which is, intended to say like this is a way to get to wisdom, right? But what we have here in Ecclesiastes is that it is challenging some of what the author of Proverbs says, and it says there are other ways of being wise, or there are other ways of understanding wisdom. This isn't the only approach. And along with this, we find some wisdom literature in Psalms and the book of Job as well. So what the Bible is telling us is that there are diverse ways of seeking out wisdom, and that there is not one simple staple formula to being wise. And when we come to Ecclesiastes, this type of wisdom that we find in this book, it is somehow discovered in the frame of gloom and negativity. And if we're open to the message of the speaker of Ecclesiastes, then there is a brighter side to the story, or maybe a more wise side to the story. So, what is wise and good about saying life is meaningless and death is imminent? How can that be wise or good? So that's what we're going to get into today. So, to get to that point of how it's wise and good, to talk about meaninglessness and death, I'm going to ask you guys a question. So why is it that people like me, and maybe like you, enjoy sad movies or dark TV shows or unhappy endings in, whatever it is we're watching? Have you ever really thought about that? Because it is prominent, it is popular. Why do we enjoy these dark things? So this concept of and finding enjoyment from sadness or from darkness. It's very interesting. It's a lot of psychologists and, different researchers have looked at this phenomenon. And there's not necessarily one staple answer that we're just going to choose and go with. Could be a lot of reasons for it. Maybe not enough research has been done, but there's a lot of different opinions and perspectives. One important reason that we might like these sad movies is that we realize that our own lives aren't as bad. They're not as dark. They're not as sad. We obviously, everybody goes through things in their life and we feel different things. But when we see these very dramatized films and TV shows, we're like, oh, well, at least I'm not there. And it kind of makes us feel better about whatever circumstances or situations that we are in. For most of us, the sadness and trauma that we see when we're watching Titanic, it's not going to compare to some of the things that we have going on in our own life. While still we might go through sad and traumatic things, just most of the time we're not experiencing that level of sadness and trauma, especially in these TV shows and films that are that's their job, is to draw out those deepest emotions, those that, to make it feel real. And maybe our own life, we're not feeling it in exactly that same sense. So that's one of the reasons why we might enjoy these sad things. Some other research suggests that there are two main reasons why we experience enjoyment from sad things. And the first one is realism, and the second one is involvement. Realism and involvement. So realism, it says, that sad movies, they don't escape reality in the same way we might think of some other genres do. Sadness, it's this authentic experience that we all go through as humans. And in a world where a lot of the movies we watch are superhero films or fairy tales or like the Hallmark channel, and where it's like happy endings, and maybe there's a little toughness, but overall they make you feel good. These sad movies, they remind us of the struggles and the challenges, and in a way they tell us that those stories, the feelings we go through, the challenges that we go through, those stories are worth telling too. We can't simply look away from sadness and pretend like it's not real, even in the entertainment we choose to use. This genre, it illuminates the full and real experience of what it is to live. And to some of us, that is very enjoying to see that played out on TV. It's, this liking of seeing these experiences, it's interesting, and it's a little bit more complex than a lot of the feel-goods. The second reason we like these are because that this research suggests is that because we feel involved in sad movies and TV shows. We reflect on our own experiences, the dark and sad things we go through, and we're invited to sort of like watch these characters on the screen go through and process some of the same stuff that we go through and process. And in that, like, there is satisfaction and fulfillment in being able to become invested in that way. For me, I don't just watch a sad movie as this like neutral viewer. I really do. I become invested, and I sort of begin to identify with different parts of what I'm watching or different characters. And it really helps me to make meaning of some of my own feelings a lot of the time, which is definitely a fulfilling and satisfying thing. Another reason that research suggests sad movies make us feel good is because we kind of get to go through these difficult feelings together a lot of the time. In a world before COVID, obviously, watching movies, it's a thing that we go to the theater and we do with a room full of people. Or, we go over to our friend's house and we have movie nights and we watch these together. And it's this communal act that we watch these movies and we feel these feelings at the exact same time. I know a lot of people in my life who they really only cry in front of other people during a movie. Like, they're never gonna cry to their friends about the things that are going through their life. They kind of hold that back. But when it's a movie and it's sad and they're crying, they're like, oh, well, it's because it's a movie. And like, and that space, it invites us to feel things together in a way that maybe we're not necessarily comfortable doing on our own, which is a really cool thing, because we get to bond with each other in these emotions over whatever TV or movie is happening. And we get to see that our neighbor who was with us, they felt and they saw, the same thing we did. And I don't know about you, but like for me, a lot of the time after movies, or even if I didn't see it necessarily with them at the same time, when their big movie comes out that was really good and it was a sad one, or there was a lot of emotion, I find myself talking to people about it, and you bond in those experiences. Even if afterwards, after you go to the theater, you go out to dinner and you talk about everything that happened in the movie and we share those feelings, or even on the car ride home, not only the movies and what happened, but really just how they made us feel. We're able to resonate with each other in those ways. So something that's really cool about Ecclesiastes, in this communal watching of movies sense, Ecclesiastes does a similar thing here. In the Jewish tradition, they celebrate the Feast of Sukkot by one of the things they do to celebrate it is they read through the entire book of Ecclesiastes together. This holiday, what it does, this feast, it actually is meant to celebrate the hard times that the Israelites faced while they were wandering the desert before they found the Promised Land. So in reading this dark book of Ecclesiastes and in remembering the hard times of the Israelite history, this book and its tradition, and even in the way that it's narrated, it invites us to look at our own dark and sad moments, not only to reflect on them, but to work towards perhaps, or begin to look back and view these moments in celebration, as that is what our history was, what our past was, and where it's brought us to now, and how it's shaped us and formed us. We're reminded of the difficult and the dark times we've been through, and we get to embrace, whatever it is that our life is now, simply because there's more life to be lived, and we've made it through some hard things, if we're being honest with ourselves. Ecclesiastes is really cool because it is this stark reminder that the rest of the Bible, it's a stark reminder that against the rest of the Bible, that not everything has to be so heavy. Yes, there are boundaries and there are outlines of the good life, and those things are meant to help keep us on the right path. But Ecclesiastes reminds us that this path is only right if it really leads us to a good life, a life that can be enjoyed and shared and lived in harmony with our Creator. Because the author of Ecclesiastes pushes us to enjoy, there's darkness and there are hard times, and the author of Ecclesiastes says all that is pointless if you're not going to enjoy this life that God gave you. And it really encourages us to seize what truly does have meaning in a world where things are hard and a lot of it doesn't really matter. It pushes us towards experiencing the things we do in a more worthwhile way, and at the same time hoping and continuing to hope that there is something greater to come, in the next life, or in the next whatever it is we want to call it. There are 10 times in this book, actually, that the speaker of Ecclesiastes tells us to enjoy this life, enjoy what we do have, because we don't get to keep it forever. Enjoy what you can. Pray that God will have more for you in the future. And this is how we live the good life in the frame of Ecclesiastes. Enjoy what you can and pray, and recognize that a lot of this really doesn't matter as much as we think it does. That is how the path to wisdom looks in this book. In the midst of all of the doom and the gloom, the speaker really reminds us, you might as well enjoy your life. Life is short, and a lot of what you think matters really doesn't. Bad things are going to happen, and you really can't stop them. So just enjoy every moment that you can. The author also asks us to, recognize that whatever we do isn't going to change the next impending tragedy. It's not going to undo the previous one. So just make the moment of every moment that you get to experience. Something that's repeated also is, eat and drink with the people in your life. Celebrate the moments that you get to celebrate. This is all against that background of the world is so dark and it's so sad and it's so doomed. So in light of that, choose to live brightly and fully, and choose to have the hope that this isn't the finished product of life, that we get to believe there is something greater coming, and we still get to enjoy exactly where we are now, exactly what we're doing now, and make the most of this time with each other, even though we hope that there are better times to come. I think that Ecclesiastes calls us to live radically different in the world, to live radically different in a world that is, dark and gloomy. And it tells us to choose love, to choose healing, to choose enjoyment and fun. One of those ways we do this is we watch sad movies with those we love. We bond with each other. We watch happy movies. We eat good meals in good company, and we really choose to embrace the best parts of life, whatever that looks like for you, and where you're at right now. We're also called to, at the same time, give praise to our Creator and celebrate our Creator, because another important part of Ecclesiastes tells us that our life really isn't going to mean much if we're not also celebrating the gift of life that God has given us and what it means to fully be alive, and all of the joy and the despair, and just those experiences that really add to the fullness and the full spectrum of life. We get to allow those dark or sad moments of this crazy life to help us reflect on all of the happy and the wonderful things that there are to experience in this world. We're called to treat each other well because we're all facing this together. So we might as well enjoy it, and we might as well recognize that it's not going to be easy, it's not going to be perfect, but there is still room to enjoy this life that God has given us. I'm going to close with another passage from Ecclesiastes, Ecclesiastes 3:12-15. I know that there's nothing better for them but to enjoy themselves and do what's good while they live. Moreover, this is the gift of God, that all people should eat, drink, and enjoy the results of their hard work. I know that whatever God does will last forever. It's impossible to add to it or to take away from it. God has done this so that people are reverent before him. Whatever happens has already happened, and whatever will happen has already happened before, and God looks after what it is driven away. So in this message, we're called to radically live differently than how so much of this world tells us to live, to really enjoy what it is that we have, that this faith doesn't have to be so rigid, so strict, so disciplined, and that all of that is getting at the point that this life is meant to be enjoyed and lived to the fullest, and live into that true identity of who God created us to be creatures that partake and embrace in the fullness and the abundance of everything that God has done for us. And if we lose sight of that, we lose sight of everything that God is doing with humanity. So I encourage you to enjoy your life and don't forget that. Let's go ahead and we'll pray ourselves